General Abe Lincoln. You know what? He was a great man, of course.
Yes.
But he was also one savvy political operator who knew how to employ the press.
I didn't realize he got very cozy with the press. In fact, employed them. He kept his frenemies very close.
Did he invent the spin zone? He was very, very good. Not only was he honest and all these great things, but boy, oh boy, a real manipulator at times when he came to the press. Let's meet the expert, though. There's a new book. It's called The War for Public Opinion, Lincoln and the Power of the Press by
Harold Holzer.
And he's written now, I think, 47. This is his 47th book on the 16th President of the United States. Sir, welcome to Good Day.
Thank you. Great to be here.
Well, no one has ever explored the power of the press and Abe Lincoln. They went hand in hand, so to speak.
It was a period when politicians were editors were politicians, and Lincoln just understood that milieu. He operated in it, and he, as you say, he mastered the press. He mastered the art of communication without ever holding a press conference, without ever holding a camera. He knew exactly how to get his message across.
He picked on three people, and basically befriended them and did whatever he possibly could. And he picked three very powerful people.
Three New Yorkers, of course. Horace Greely of the New York Tribune, Henry Raymond of the New York Times, James Gordon Bennet of the New York Herald. Maybe forgotten names today, but I'll tell you how closely aligned they were with politics. The editor of the New York Times, now think Arthur Sulzberger Jr., right, was also chairman of the Republican National Committee, a candidate for Congress, and the author of a Lincoln campaign biography for the re-election of 1864.
So this was, he was working. He befriended these guys, but he had his own purposes. There was a Machiavellian streak in Lincoln, fair to say?
Absolutely. He wanted to restore the Union, he wanted slavery to be destroyed, and he wanted the press on his side. By the way, if you weren't on his side, there was a danger that you were not only going to be ignored in getting political jobs, you might be shut down by the Army, by the Post Office Department, by the courts. More than 200 newspapers during the Civil War were shut down. Their editors were arrested, some thrown into a prison in Brooklyn. Tough times.
And also, Abe Lincoln also published some anonymous blogs, I guess you would call them, right?
They were like blogs. He did anonymous editorials when he wanted his point of view across and the editors weren't getting it right. He did the drafting himself in that recognizable style. Got away with it.
I'm sorry, did you say a moment ago that he had reporters thrown in jail?
I did say that.
Abe Lincoln had reporters thrown in prison.
And unlike the Egyptian editors who today announced that they were protesting the non-criticism agreement by Egyptian journalists, the editors, the Republican editors, and they were all either Democratic or Republican. Republican editors said, that's fine, we approve. You can't cross the line between dissent and treason. So the editor of the New York World was arrested at his office, detained, almost thrown into Fort Lafayette in Brooklyn, but Lincoln eventually countermanded the order. But he sent a chill. That's what he intended to do.
Harold, when you write these books, I mean, are there lessons to be learned? Do you think that politicians nowadays should learn from Abraham Lincoln something, his relationships?
I think they should stop kvetching, as they said in Lincoln's day. Stop complaining about the fact that the press is possibly favoring one side or the other. It was openly so in Lincoln's day, and they had 80% turnout.
Yeah, did you know that in those days that you would know if a reporter was Democrat or Republican?
That is wild, but also maybe the lesson is be less like Lincoln. I mean, some of this stuff would not fly today.
Right.
I mean, James Risen of the Times, you know, they just subpoenaed him. I mean, and look at the big issue.
Well, it was a civil war, so the rules were different.
Well, we have a war underway as well.
Absolutely, and they make the same claim about detention without trial for suspected terrorists. It's similar. Those are the lessons I think that are in the book.
When did it come to pass that reporters were not allowed to declare what party they were affiliated with?
It was really the end of the 19th century, beginning of the 20th century. And for the whole 19th century, really up through and past the Civil War, every little town had two newspapers, one Democratic, one Republican, at each other's throats. And people who read descriptions of a political event would not recognize the event if they attended it from one description or another. But people loved it. They really, and that's why they had such mass participation in politics and in elections.
Good stuff. How tall was Lincoln?
6'4".
6'4", and the beard. Just tell me the whole deal with the beard. He grew the beard. Why again?
A little girl from upstate New York.
This is a true story.
It's a true story. Wrote a letter and said, I could tease my brothers to vote for you, but your face is too thin. He wrote her a letter saying, wouldn't it be a piece of affectation if I were to do that now? I've never had a beard. And yet when he rolled through on his inaugural train into Westfield, New York, in Chautauqua County. He called out to see if she was in the crowd. And they passed her up. He kissed her, and he said, "As you can see, I've acted on your suggestion, and here it is."
Wow.
And she ran home and hid under a wagon. She was so embarrassed. When they coaxed her out, she told that story for the next 75 years on the banquet circuit.
That's
That is
beautiful.
funny. So what do? You read a lot of his different letters and stuff and kind of put together all this information?
Yeah. Well, for this, with the same kind of, as we discussed during the break, the same kind of break and problems that you've had, I investigated the papers, meaning the collected letters of the editors that I wanted to deal with. And that's where you get the real stories about how they were angling for payoffs and jobs. Lincoln appointed so many editors to diplomatic posts.
So
and
do we
post office
overglorify
jobs.
him now? Do we overglorify Lincoln? Many of us look past his flaws. I mean, this guy was a politician, a crafty
Absolutely.
politician as well.
Well, I don't think we over-admire him. I think he was so brilliant at everything he did. He's still the greatest writer among presidents. He did keep this country whole and made it possible for it to be strong. He ended slavery. He just knew that to achieve it, he had to be a terrific politician and a master of the press.
Well done. Harold Holzer, you can read about it right now, The War for Public Opinion, Lincoln and the Power of the Press, available pretty much everywhere.
I hope so.
Okay.
Nice to have you back here. Good luck with your shoulder.
Thank you. And you too.
Thank you. All right.